Hey everybody, I'm Jay.
And I'm Tracy, and together we lead the South Orange County Church.
We want to welcome you to our Connect video series, and we're really glad that you're here with us today. Every week we try to take some time and we just try to talk about Jesus, and because we believe that following Jesus is the best way to live your life. And so we're really focusing in right now on just what it means to be an apprentice of Jesus, and then what that would look like in our everyday lives.
Yeah, one of our core convictions as a church is that it's good to start each week setting aside time for God and His people.
Right.
So all over South Orange County this weekend, we have small groups of people, little communities that are meeting together to discuss the very things we're talking about today. So watch all the way to the end of the video so that you can find out how to join one of those groups.
Yep. So grab a cup of coffee in your journal and let's get started. All right, welcome back. So I've been really excited to be able to talk about these things. Over the last several months, I've been just doing a lot of reading and a lot of thinking and a lot of just trying to reevaluate my own spiritual life and my relationship with God and what that looks like on a day-to-day basis. And it's been really encouraging to do so, but it's drawn me more and more into looking at how did Jesus live? And, we talked about this last week, but, when Jesus said, I came to give you peace. My peace I give you, my peace I leave with you. Don't be troubled. The world is troubled. The world's got all these troubles. You don't have to be troubled. Come to me, you who are weary and burdened, I will give you rest. My yoke is easy and my burden is light. So we hear this invitation from Jesus to live in a way that is full of peace, and where His yoke is easy and His burden is light. I've really been looking at that because sometimes in my life, I don't always feel like that it feels easy and light, and peace sometimes feels elusive. And so I've been looking at this going, I know that this is a promise from God. And if it's a promise from God, I know that I can believe in it and I can have it. So if I'm not experiencing that, what is it maybe in my own life that I can change or that I can address? Or how do I do this differently so that I can grow closer to God on an everyday basis and have that peace that He does promise? And so like we talked about last week, if you want the peace of Jesus, you have to choose to live the lifestyle of Jesus. Mm-hmm. If you want to have that kind of life that Jesus had, you have to live His lifestyle. And so I think too often we will dismiss that and go, well, yeah, but the lifestyle, I mean, that was 2,000 years ago, and He lived in Galilee, and He was a fisherman, and it was an agrarian community, and he didn't have all the technical things that we have today, the technology and the cars and the email and all that stuff. Jesus didn't have that. So then we dismiss the idea of living the lifestyle that He lived, because when we think lifestyle, we're thinking those kind of things, all the modern creature comforts that we have and travel and all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. But what I'm talking about, when I'm talking about the lifestyle of Jesus, living in the lifestyle of Jesus, is the way that He approached His relationship with God and the time that He took to spend time with God and the things that He did on a daily basis to be connected with God the Father. That's the kind of lifestyle that I'm talking about. I'm talking about your intentional moments with God that you spend, the quiet times of silence and solitude. I'm talking about having a Sabbath rest, taking an actual Sabbath rest, not because it was a religious law only for the pre-New Testament Jews, but because it's something that God has said, hey, this is, if you insert this type of spiritual rest and replenishment into your week, this is what will help you to be able to be connected with me. Mm-hmm. When I'm talking about lifestyle, I'm talking about actually choosing to deny yourself and fasting so that you can grow closer to God in that way. I'm talking about, spending time in prayer and really understanding that. And so these are the things that I've been thinking about and praying about and trying to, get closer to connecting with, I guess.
Right. I think the way that I've been thinking about it is, we have that very famous saying, what would Jesus do? And this is such a good thing. And I remember when I was younger, they used to have these wristbands, they say, what would Jesus do?
WWJD.
So you could look, yes. So you could look at it and think about that when you're in a tough situation, when you're in a place where you have to make a decision, or, what would Jesus do? And that is a very good question. But I think the question that I've been asking more is, what is the way that Jesus lived?
Right.
Not just what did he do, but what is the way in which he lived?
Right.
And thinking about how even in the New Testament, many times they were called the way.
Right.
Right?
The early church.
That was how they referred to the early Christians, was the followers of the way.
Capital T, capital W.
Yes, and so I've started just investigating, looking at Jesus's life more as in trying to glean from his lifestyle and not allowing myself that 21st century vision, right? And thinking these aren't just things that were there because it was the first century, but what are the principles that apply to every century? Since he was God in the flesh, then we know that it's the same principles that applied at the garden, at the creation, that apply to today. And what can I glean from his lifestyle or the way that he lived? And how can I make my life more in that way? I was thinking about how I love to read biographies.
Okay.
I do. My family actually makes fun of me, mainly because I watch so many documentaries.
Wait, define family, because I'm going to be included in your family.
Okay, my kids make fun of me, and they kind of have a reason, because I kind of forced a lot of documentaries on them. And but I'm a documentary lover. Like I love documentaries. I love history. I love biographies. I love to do that. And that's the reason I like to do that, is like to see the way they lived. People that did these incredible things or went through a certain incredible time. I like to see the way in which they lived. And we know that we do this when we find a certain guru of something, of weight loss, or of, financial success, or any, sports figures, anybody that we kind of want to emulate, somebody that we look up to and think, I kind of want the outcome of their life, So we read their biographies because we want to know, well, what time did they get up in the morning? And what did they eat? And then you adjust your own lifestyle, to line up with that hero of yours, whoever it is, sort of because you want to become at least a little bit like them. You want the outcome of their way of life. And I think that I've been starting to read the Gospels from that point of view, where usually, we kind of read the story of Jesus, we read the Gospels as if, it's a theological treatise, or it's and there's, obviously there's theology in there. That's good. There's some history, whatever. But I think reading it more like a biography. I've been gleaning a lot of. I've been noticing. When did he do that? How did that happen? What was the way in which he did it? Not just what did he do, but what was the way in which he did it?
Yeah, and it's so good to try to think about it that way, because that is like what we talked about last week. That's when we get to walk into this idea of being with Jesus. How do I be with Jesus when it's in 2021? I've got my time of prayer, and I've got my time of trying to really connect with the Spirit and walk with the Spirit. But then also, if I'm really looking at the way that the Gospels say that he did something, how he talked to people, where he went, how he approached things. That's another way for me to try to figure out how can I actually be with him in that way. Last week we talked about taking time, out of one day, setting your alarm so that, every hour you would be reminded to notice your awareness of the presence of God. And so I hope that some of you were able to do that, or at least that thought came to you some during this week, that like, okay, do I even go through my day in the presence of God? Because it's something that we have to train our minds to do. The thing that we give our attention to, that really starts to shape our character. The thing that we focus our minds on, then that really becomes more of who we are. In the Proverbs it says, as a man thinketh, so he is, right? The way that our thoughts go, what we focus on, that becomes, really a part of who we are. And so I just am wanting to urge us more and more, like, let's spend time with Jesus. Let's be with him. Let's really focus and try to be like our rabbi and be covered in the dust of our rabbi.
Yeah, in the moment, right?
In the moment,
like
right.
we did last week. And I started thinking about this when we, after that lesson, that this is something that the secular world has figured out as well. I mean, this is what you're going to even get from the secular world, is being present.
Right.
But this is the teaching of Jesus. This was his teaching originally, is bringing yourself, you're not thinking about the regrets of the past, and you're not worrying about the future. You're right in the moment with Jesus by your side.
Right.
You're practicing that presence.
Right.
And so even the secular world is kind of catching up with, like, no, this is actually a universal principle. This is a godly, they're catching up to a godly principle.
Well, one of the things that makes it so difficult for us now to be able to do it is the amount of distraction that is in our world, which lines up with our attention span. And when you think, because social media, they have gone through and figured out, how do I capitalize on the short attention span of people, and how do I get them to be always thinking and always looking, and because so many things about social media that you could talk about, but the dopamine hit that comes from if somebody liked my post, or a notification that comes up, like our smartphones have become this constant source of dopamine, but it's also a distraction. But then we become addicted to the dopamine, and so then we live in this constant state of distraction. Yeah. There was actually a study that looked into our attention span in the year 2000. Our culture, our attention span was down to 12 seconds in the year 2000. 12 seconds. That's not a lot. It's kind of embarrassing, that on average, modern Americans, adults, this is where our attention span is. Now, the last 2 decades have not really been kind to us in that way, because now here we are in 2021 and we're down to 8 seconds. Our attention span is down to 8 seconds. And so just to put it in a little bit of perspective for you, goldfish have an attention span of 9 seconds. So we're losing in the attention war to goldfish, people. So,
It's so hard to keep your attention on something.
It absolutely is. And I'm just so humbled and convicted by this. And I shared with the guys at midweek, last time that we had midweek, that I was, in my effort I'm really wanting to learn how to be more present and how to end my day with God and then start my day with God, and seeing how the phone was becoming such a distraction to that, because I would use my phone for my alarm clock, and so I had it in my bedroom, and so I told all the guys I was going to get it out of my bedroom, and I put my charger on my desk, and that's where I leave my phone to charge now. And so I've had several nights of, like, I'm ready to go to bed, I put my phone on the charger, it's awesome, and then I go to bed and I can pray, and then in the morning, my decision was I'm not going to pick up my phone until after I've had my time with God and done that. And so I had to share that publicly, because I knew that I wouldn't do it, because I'd been even thinking about it for 2 or 3 weeks before that, but I wouldn't do it because I'm addicted to it. Yeah. And so now, it's been this way for a couple of weeks, but what I'll find myself doing is, like, okay, I think I'm going to go to bed. I won't put my phone on the charger yet. I'll still take my phone to bed and read something or scroll through something or do something, and then when I'm ready to go to sleep, I'll get up, I'll walk downstairs to my office, put my phone on my charger, then walk back up. The whole time going, what an idiot, just like, but it's helping me even to see just how sometimes weak my willpower is. And because I get so pulled into this, and then especially if it's been a stressful day, or there's a lot of fear of things that I'm dealing with, or frustration, I find myself looking for something else to soothe myself, something else to deal with that pain, rather than going to God. And so it's, even in doing this exercise of charging my phone on my desk, it's showing me just how much the opportunities that I have to go to God that I don't take. And so that's why we really want to talk about this, is because this is something I'm working on, for myself. I want to be closer to God. I want to spend time with Jesus. And I want that for all of us too. I want that for our church, for all of us to be able to do that. You know, John Ortberg, great author and writer, said this. He said, "For many of us, the great danger is not that we will renounce our faith. It is that we will become so distracted and rushed and preoccupied that we will settle for a mediocre version of it. We will skim our lives instead of actually living them." And I just thought, that's it. I contend to settle for a mediocre version of my faith rather than actually living it out. And I'm not going to renounce it. I'm not going to give up Christianity. I'm not going to give up Jesus. I said Jesus was Lord, but then I will settle into a mediocre version of following Jesus that does not include the peace that Jesus offered and does not include an easy yoke and a light burden. And that's not who I want to be. Dallas Willard, another great writer, said this. He said, "An overbusy, digitally distracted life of speed is the greatest threat that we face to a spiritual life in the modern world." And I just think this is so true. And so what I'm wanting all of us to be able to do is think about, what does this look like to have the lifestyle of Jesus? And what can we change even in our day-to-day life now to bring us more in line with how Jesus lived in his relation to the Father? So I am asking you to actually really examine your life. I'm asking you to dig deep into and be honest about, be brutally and ruthlessly honest about your habits and about your distractions and the things that keep you from Jesus and from that peace. And be willing to make some changes that are hard. One of the best things you can do about it is just be honest about it and talking about it, just getting it out in the open. Because I guarantee you, now that I've put this part on video about my phone, that's going to change that, And then people ask me about it too. "Hey, how's it going with your phone?" I'm like, "Yes, I hate you for asking, but thank you." The author William Irvine, in his book, A Guide to the Good Life, said this. "There is a danger that you will mislive, that despite all your activity, despite all the pleasant diversions you might have enjoyed while alive, you will end up living a bad life. There is, in other words, a danger that when you are on your deathbed, you will look back and realize that you wasted your one chance at living. Instead of spending your life pursuing something genuinely valuable, you squandered it because you allowed yourself to be distracted by the various baubles that life has to offer." And this is what I want us. I don't want us to mislive. I don't want us to mislive. I don't want us to miss out on this peace that Jesus is offering to us. I don't want us to live a mediocre faith. I want us to really experience what it means like to be with Jesus, to be his apprentice, to follow him.
One of the things I've discovered about myself lately is that there just seems to be so much incoming all the time, and there's a lot of sin incoming. Like there's a lot of crazy things happening out there, right? So there's a lot of this, and I feel myself almost like I'm shooting, but no. Yep. And as I've been rethinking this way of Jesus, like he lived in a totally debaucherous, horribly sinful time.
Right.
I mean, it's not, we don't have anything up on the first century Rome, right? So I know but he didn't live that way. And so as I find myself doing this, I'm like, no, the way of Jesus is so totally different. It's not just fighting sin. It's not just fighting all of this. It's actually proactively living a different lifestyle that does make people scratch their heads. Like, why do you live like that? Why would you? And of course, at first, mostly it just looks weird. But to know that the whole entire world is in a hurry and they are distracted. The entire world. It doesn't matter if you're a student in school or an empty nester.
Right.
The entire world would classify themselves as busy. And all of us are struggling from soul anemia, right? And so I'm choosing the way of Jesus because I'm actually proactively choosing my soul, the condition of my soul, over the conditions of this world.
Right.
So that's kind of the way that I've been taking it into my mind.
Yeah. So let's spend a little bit of time looking at Jesus and kind of how he or one aspect of how he dealt with this connection with the Father in the midst of distraction and expectations and sin. So last week we looked in the beginning of John where he was calling his first disciples, and he called Simon and Andrew and Philip and Nathaniel and the whole deal. He was like, come and see, just come and be with me, spend time with me. But today I want to go over to Mark chapter 1 and read, after he's called his first disciples, and he's gathering his disciples to him. He's building his little band of misfits, the guys that are going to be with him. We see this story that kind of plays out then after that. And it's in Mark chapter 1, verse 21. They went into Capernaum, and when the Sabbath came, Jesus went into the synagogue and began to teach. So here we are in Capernaum. And Capernaum was kind of one of the centers of where the Pharisees lived, up on the north side of the Sea of Galilee. They were very well read, very well educated. And so here's the Sabbath. He goes in and he begins to teach. And then in the middle of it, this demon-possessed man stands up and starts screaming, Jesus, what do you want from us? Have you come to destroy us? I know who you are, the Holy One of God. And Jesus casts him out and silences him. And everybody's like, what just happened? What? That was bizarre, right? And they're all like, this guy, there's something different about this guy.
He's got authority.
Right.
That's what they said. Something different about the way he teaches.
Right.
With authority.
So, it was a good day. You know what I mean? Like in the sense of there, something very significant just happened. And sometimes we read over these things like, okay, and then he healed a guy with the head demon, or he healed a man with leprosy. No, this was huge that he healed this guy in the synagogue in Capernaum on the Sabbath. Okay, like big moment here. And so then in verse 29, it says, as soon as they left the synagogue, they went with James and John to the home of Simon and Andrew. So now it's the five of them, and they're like, okay, we leave the synagogue, and James and John and Simon and Andrew are like, that was awesome! And feeling so excited about this. This is so great. And so they come over to my house, let's go eat. Yeah. So they go over to Simon's house to eat, but his mother-in-law is sick. And so Jesus walks in and touches her and says, get up. And she gets up, her fever's gone. And then she starts cooking all the food and making everything. So they're hanging out. It's a party. It's awesome. They're having a great day, right? As the Sabbath is ending. Sabbath goes from sundown on Friday to sundown on Saturday. So this was all Saturday morning, Saturday during the day when they're in the synagogue doing the healing and everything. And they're back at Simon and Andrew's house, hanging out, eating. Simon's mother-in-law is cooking the food. It must have been awesome. What a beautiful scene, right? Then in verse 32, it says, that evening after sunset, the people brought to Jesus all the sick and demon-possessed. So they waited until the Sabbath was done, and then they just rushed the house, and like everybody's surrounding the house. Please, you got it, because by that time word had spread all over the city, and that Jesus can heal people. This guy can heal people. Right. And so they brought all the sick and the demon-possessed. The whole town gathered at the door. And Jesus healed many who had various diseases. He also drove out many demons, but he would not let the demons speak because they knew who he was. The whole town is there. So everybody is there. And so all night he's healing people, right? Now, what did that look like? I wish I knew, how much energy did that take out of him? I just know every time that I preach or that I speak at midweek or I do something like that, it takes a lot of energy. Yeah. It feels, I'll do a 30-minute sermon somewhere and it feels like, oh my gosh, I just ran several miles, because there's so much emotional energy that goes into it. And so, you're thinking, your brain is going, your emotions are involved, and there's so much that goes into it. I wonder if it was like that for him too. Mm-hmm. So that by the end of the night, was he exhausted? Was he physically exhausted? Was he emotionally exhausted, or was he emotionally fired up? Like what did that look like for him?
Yeah. That's one of my favorite scenes in The Chosen, by the way.
Yeah,
it's a great one. There's a great scene after he spends the day healing and him coming back and just being exhausted. It's a great scene.
That is. That's one of the best
It's not
episodes.
this exact scene, but it's something similar.
It's one of the best episodes. It's so good. And it's beautiful because then his mom is there and she helps him get ready for bed. So sweet. Really sweet. So anyhow, right after this, they all go to bed. And then it says, very early in the morning, while it was still dark, Jesus got up, left the house, and went off to a solitary place where he prayed. And so we see what happens here is that, Jesus gets up the next morning and he's like, okay, that was a lot of output. I was in the synagogue. I was preaching and teaching. I healed the guy there. We spent all afternoon having a party. We were eating. It was great. And then I spent all night healing people. I need some time with the Father. Yeah. I need to be replenished. I need to go back and reconnect with God. I mean, so right before he called his disciples, he'd been out in the desert. He'd gotten baptized, and then he went in the desert for 40 days, where he spent that time connecting with God and learning how to rely on him alone. And so now here he is the next day, and he gets up and he goes off and he prays. And the picture of it then is that, well, let's just read it. It says, Simon and his companions went to look for him. And when they found him, they exclaimed, everyone is looking for you. And Jesus replied, let us go somewhere else to the nearby villages so I can preach there also. That is why I've come. So he traveled throughout Galilee, preaching in their synagogues and driving out demons. So Simon and all his guys are like, hey, let's do day 2. It's time. All these people are lined up. And Jesus is like, you know what? I just spent time with God, and he reminded me of my bigger mission. And he didn't let the distraction of the urgent or the distraction of what was right in front of him keep him from the bigger picture mission that God had given to him. But he had to go back and reconnect with God and be reminded of, this is what I want you to do. This is how I want you to live. And so we see from that Jesus needed these moments of silence and solitude to spend with his Father, to be able to gather that strength, to be able to be reminded of who God had made him to be reminded of his identity, to be reminded of the mission that he had in the world. And staying there in Capernaum and healing more people, that would have been a good thing, but that wasn't what God wanted him to do. God had something else in mind for him. There's a lot of good things that you and I could be doing. Your day is probably filled with all kinds of good things, taking care of your family, dealing with your job, talking to your friends, all this stuff. But sometimes we need to get back into that moment of solitude with God the Father through our time with the Spirit and listen for his reminder of who he made us to be and his reminder of the mission that we have in the world. What is it that God wants me to do, and how does he want me to fulfill it? So here's what we want to encourage you to do this week. Last week we talked about just taking one day where you set an alarm every hour and notice your awareness of the presence of God. This week we want to encourage you to do what Jesus did, which is to go off by yourself in a solitary place. If you can do it early in the morning, I think that's great. But even if you can't, just taking time out of your normal routine, out of the expected schedule of your life, and setting aside 1 hour to go and be alone with God. And for us in 2021, I would say that here's the caveat to that. You cannot take your phone. You can't take your phone with you. I want you to leave your phone in the car or leave your phone at home.
I use my phone for whatever.
You can't in this this situation. Yeah,
it always is like, I can use my phone for a picture. I have to use my phone.
I can take notes with it. I can listen to music on it. I can look up Bibles. What if I want to what if I want to read the Bible? You're telling me I can't read the Bible? No. Take a paper journal and a paper Bible with you if you want, but see if you can do it without your phone. And just spend an hour sitting in the presence of God. And this is where you can. There's some great things that will help you to be able to focus your mind. Some great breathing exercises that you can do to be able to do that. I know I shared some of that at the men's midweek a few weeks ago, and some of the guys were rolling their eyes at me. I get it, but it also works. So if you can set aside your own judgment about that, and just spend some time calming down even your physiology, calming down your nervous system so that you can start to hear from God. We're so amped up all the time. Our amygdala is firing all the time. We got so much anxiety going. And our 8-second attention span is keeping us from being able to just take some deep breaths and then just say, God, I am here. Your servant is listening. Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening. And just spend some time with God, and then write down what you hear. Write down what you hear God saying to you. Write down the questions that come up, what he's sharing with you.
Yeah, and I want to encourage you, if you feel like you're a person that's like, I can't, I'm always having to be, I have to move, I have, this, I just can't sit still for that long, or I just can't. You can. Spoken from one person to another. Just expect that is going to be a struggle. Know it is, that your mind is going to be going, and you just gradually bring it back. You always bring it back. It's that thought that just because, a car goes by, you can let cars go by, but you don't have to jump into every one of them. That's how your thoughts are. So you let the thoughts go by. They're like cars just driving by you, and then you bring yourself back to God.
Right.
And God is going to lead you, because this is not a time to say, I just can't. That's just not who I am. This is who Jesus is.
Right.
This is what he did. This was the way of Jesus.
Right.
So that little part of us that says that's just not who I am has to change.
Right.
Because we know that Jesus came from the beginning. His first words were repent.
Mm-hmm.
Repent, for the kingdom of heaven is near. That means change your mind, change how you are.
Mm-hmm.
You remember this probably. Some of you who have been baptized, you changed a lot.
Right.
It's the same today.
Right.
We change who we are and our natural propensities to become more of who Jesus was.
Right. Right. So hopefully this is going to help you as you spend some time being with Jesus this week, trying to set aside the distractions and really focusing on learning how to be his apprentice and what that means to follow him every day. So we're excited to continue talking about this. I think it's going to be really great. A couple things that I wanted to share with you for our church. I just wanted to say thank you for your continued generosity to this ministry.
Yes.
There's a lot of great things that are going on, and I'm really, really grateful for that. Thank you to those of you that have been consistent and faithful in your giving.
Yes.
And your generosity allows our church to continue and do some really great things, and I'm really grateful for that. I also wanted to share with you that we're really excited about some things that are coming up with the partnership that we have with our churches in Mexico and Central America. And we are praying about being able to help start a school of ministry in Central America, which is really, really great.
Huge.
And I'm so excited about that. We have a school of ministry in Mexico City, but then to be able to also have a well-functioning school of ministry to train young ministers in Central America, I think is going to be awesome. There have been 2 great church plantings in Central America recently, in Santa Ana, El Salvador, which is really great. We have some great friends from Santa Ana, so we're very happy about that. And then also in Panama, the Panama City Church planted a church, and some great friends of ours are leading that church planting. They adopted some kids about the same time that we adopted our kids, and so we've just had great friendship with them. So we're really excited about them being able to go in the ministry and start to do this work. And so I wanted to say thank you for your continued generosity to our missions effort, to our special missions contribution, because it really does make a difference. And there is a shortfall right now in the NMCA's budget for the upcoming year. So if any of you were not able to give to our special missions contribution earlier this year, and you feel like that God is moving you to do that, that would really be helpful. Even some of our friends that we know down there, actually, they were vaccinated, but then they also got COVID, and their healthcare system is not anywhere close to what ours is. And they're having a very difficult time, some of the people who are in the ministry full-time down there. And so we want to be able to do what we can to help them and support them. So I just wanted to put that on your heart. And if any of you are passionate about that like me, then please get in contact with us and we can help you figure out how you can make a difference with that. We also wanted to tell you about coming up on October the 23rd. Really excited about this. Marty Solomon is going to be speaking to our church. He's the guy from the Bema podcast, and we called him and asked him if he would come, and he said he would, and he's fired up about it. And so the whole Orange County region is going to meet on Saturday night, October the 23rd at 6 o'clock. If you have not registered, you want to do that soon, because we're opening it up to the rest of the LA church as well, and so we may run out of tickets for that, so you want to register and get your spot. Then on Sunday, October 24th, we're going to our Sunday service for the South Orange County Church. We're going to combine with the Central Ministry and the Coastline Ministry. We're all going to have a service together that Sunday morning at the building, and Marty Solomon will actually be preaching that morning too. So we'll get Saturday night and Sunday morning with Marty, which I think will be great, and I'm really excited about that. Then we have coming up on November 7th, that will be a regional church service at the building on Sunday, November 7th as well. And then the weekend following that, we have our marriage retreat. So all of you who are married, I really encourage you to come to this marriage retreat. Go ahead and register now, get that done. It's at Universal City. And the Shapiros are coming from the East Coast to talk to us, which is gonna be awesome. And I think that'll be great. And then we're gonna head into Advent. We got the 4 Sundays before Christmas where we're gonna have special Advent services every week where we'll meet with the South Orange County Church at 4:30 p.m. on those Sundays. Except for December 4th, we'll meet on a Saturday because Maybell and Jason are getting married on December 5th on that Sunday.
Yeah.
And so December 4th we'll meet on Saturday at 4:30, but the other 3 will be on Sundays at 4:30. So there's a lot of cool stuff to be looking forward to and praying about as we're heading into the fall. And we're really excited about it. But most important, I want you to spend time with Jesus and try to learn how to walk like him and follow him and be like him this week. Amen? Awesome. All right. Have a great week, everybody.